a tax on tea, a shot fired in Lexington, a declaration of independence. The American Revolution didn't happen overnight, but what truly pushed the colonies to rise up against the most powerful empire in the world? In 1763, most American colonists were proud to be British. By 1776, they were fighting a full-scale war for independence. How did a disagreement over taxes escalate into a revolution that changed the world? The Boston Tea Party, the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Acts, every event pushed Britain and its colonies closer to war. But which moment truly started the American Revolution, the British colonies, and rising tensions? In the mid-1700s, Britain controlled 13 colonies along the eastern coast of North America. These colonies were seen as economic assets, supplying raw materials like tobacco, timber, and cotton, while buying British goods in return. However, Britain didn't allow them to trade freely with other countries. This system, called mercantilism, ensured that wealth flowed to Britain while keeping the colonies dependent on British goods. At first, the colonies accepted these restrictions. After all, they benefited from British military protection and had some degree of self-government. But things started to change after the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763. A global conflict between Britain and France that also involved battles in North America, where it was known as the French and Indian War. Britain won the war, gaining vast territory in North America. However, the victory came at a huge cost. Britain had amassed massive war debt, and Parliament believed the American colonies should help pay for their defense. After all, British troops were still stationed in North America to protect settlers from potential conflicts with Native American tribes. To recover financially, Britain introduced new taxes and trade restrictions, forcing the colonies to contribute more revenue. But many colonists, who had enjoyed relative freedom for decades, saw these taxes as unfair, especially since they had no representatives in the British Parliament. This set the stage for rising tensions and, eventually, open rebellion. The road to revolution: taxation without representation. In 1764, Britain passed the Sugar Act, placing taxes on sugar, molasses, and other goods imported into the colonies. Just a year later, the Stamp Act, 1765, followed, requiring colonists to purchase official stamps for all printed materials, from newspapers to legal documents. These were the first direct taxes imposed on the colonies, and they infuriated colonists who believed they should only be taxed by their own elected representatives, not by a distant parliament in London. This sparked the now famous rallying cry: no taxation without representation. To colonists, this wasn't just about money. It was about their fundamental rights as British citizens. They had no voice in Parliament, so why should they pay its taxes? Resistance spread quickly. In response to the Stamp Act, colonial leaders united to form the Stamp Act Congress, the first major cooperative action among the colonies. They sent petitions to the king and organized boycotts of British goods, proving they could work together against British authority. On the streets, groups like the Sons of Liberty took more radical action, staging protests, intimidating tax collectors, and even burning effigies. The backlash forced Britain to repeal the Stamp Act, but Parliament still insisted on its right to tax the colonies. In 1767, Britain passed the Townshend Acts, imposing new taxes on glass, tea, and other imports. Once again, the colonies boycotted British goods. Protests turned more frequent and aggressive, deepening the divide between Britain and the colonies and making conflict inevitable. Major conflicts leading to war. Tensions between Britain and the colonies boiled over on March 5, 1770, when a confrontation in Boston turned deadly. British soldiers, harassed by an angry crowd throwing snowballs and rocks, opened fire, killing 5 colonists. What became known as the Boston Massacre shocked the colonies, but the outrage wasn't just about the deaths. Patriot leaders like Paul Revere seized the moment, using propaganda to paint the soldiers as brutal murderers and rally public anger against British rule. 3 years later, in 1773, Britain tried once again to assert control over colonial trade. Parliament passed the Tea Act, allowing the British East India Company to sell tea directly to the colonies at a lower price. But with a catch: the tea was still taxed, and buying it would mean accepting Britain's right to tax the colonies. Many colonists saw this as a sneaky attempt to undermine their resistance. In response, on the night of December 16, 1773, a group of colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water, an act of bold defiance now known as the Boston Tea Party. Britain retaliated with the coercive acts, called the Intolerable Acts by the colonists. These laws closed Boston Harbor, dissolved the Massachusetts government, and allowed British troops to be housed in private homes. In 1774, colonial leaders gathered at the First Continental Congress, where they organized a united front, called for more boycotts, and prepared for the possibility of war. The path to revolution was now fully underway. The first shots of war. In April 1775, British troops marched from Boston to the towns of Lexington and Concord, aiming to seize hidden weapons stockpiled by colonial militias. But word spread fast, thanks to writers like Paul Revere, and when British soldiers arrived, they were met by armed colonists standing their ground. No one knows who fired the first shot, but that single gunshot became known as the shot heard round the world. It marked the moment peaceful resistance transformed into armed conflict, and the colonies were suddenly at war with Britain. Just weeks later, in May 1775, colonial leaders convened the Second Continental Congress. This time, they weren't just debating taxes, they were preparing for full-scale war. They voted to form a continental army and chose George Washington, a respected Virginian with military experience, as its commander. The fight for independence had officially begun. Love this deep dive? There's more where that came from. Explore our channel for more eye-opening videos on history, power, and hidden truths. From colonial loot to lost empires, every story is packed with intrigue. Hit subscribe, binge our content, and uncover history like never before.